Hi, this is Liz from Create Access. This video will show you how to create illuminated displays to showcase 3D models in Unreal Editor for Fortnite, or UEFN. We will be using the assets available in the Fab Marketplace, as well as 3D models we created using photogrammetry. But you can use lots of different approaches to make your displays. After you complete this lesson, you should have displays with light features ready for use in a Fortnite experience, and the skills to make additional displays using different types of assets. To get started, launch UEFN and access a new or existing project where you'd like to add your displays. Navigate to the general location where you'd like to begin building your displays. In this case, I'm going to construct displays inside a building I've built previously. To make it easier to line up your displays the way you want, it's a good idea to enable surface snapping. Surface snapping forces assets to be snapped to a surface. In this case, you'll most likely want to rest your displays on the floor of a building or on the ground. If surface snapping is enabled, an asset will automatically snap to the ground as you move it toward the ground. To enable surface snapping, click the circular button with 3 little arrows in the toolbar near the top right of the viewport. A drop-down menu should appear. In the drop-down, check Surface Snapping if it is not checked already. Leave the surface offset value at 0.0 or set it to 0.0 if it is set to some other value. This will position the asset so it is touching the ground. Changing this value to a higher number will cause the asset to hover over the ground at the height specified by the new value you chose. With surface snapping enabled, you can move an asset using the translation gizmo, and it will automatically snap to the ground. Note that this only works if you move the asset by positioning your mouse cursor at the intersection of the 3 translation gizmo handles, where you should see a white sphere. Click and drag the sphere in the direction you wish to move the asset. If you do not position your mouse in this way, your asset can sink beneath the surface of the ground when you try to move it. Now you're ready to begin building your displays. You can access many assets that can serve as the basis for your displays, including plinths, pillars, and tables, through the Fab Marketplace available within UEFN. Click on the Fab button in the toolbar near the top of your screen. In the Search Assets search area, type plinth or pillar or another search term that you wish to use. You can be as creative as you want here. For example, you could choose a boulder as your display base if you wanted a natural-looking display. For my example display, I will start by using a plinth. Your search will yield the options available based on your search term. You may want to filter your results. To do this, click on any of the drop-downs at the top of the screen to apply your desired filters. For example, I only want to use free assets right now, so I'll select Free under the Base Price filter. Your filtered results should appear on the screen. Click on an asset that you wish to use on your island and then click the blue Add to Content Browser button. Repeat this process as many times as you want by adding or changing search terms to bring different assets into your content browser. Note that if you'd like to use the same asset multiple times as the base for your displays, you only need to add it to your content browser once. You can then add or duplicate it as many times as you want once you're back on your island. Once you've added all the assets you want to use for now, close out of Fab by clicking the X at the top of the Fab window. Back on your island, open the Content drawer and note that there is now a referenced content folder. Click the down arrow next to referenced content and you should see your newly added assets from Fab available for use. Add each asset to your island as many times as you want in the general location you'd like them to be. I'll show you how to make more precise adjustments shortly. You can click and drag each asset from your content drawer multiple times, or you can replicate an asset by selecting the asset, accessing the translation gizmo, and then using Alt plus click and drag. The assets you imported may not be sized or located the way you want them to be when you first bring them onto your island from the content drawer. You can change the location, orientation, and relative size of assets by using the Translate, Rotate, and Scale gizmos. Translate moves an object along the X, Y, or Z axis and is used to change the location of your object in space. Rotate changes your object's rotation relative to the ground. Scale changes your object's relative size. Click and drag the handles on the Translate, Rotate, and Scale gizmos to see how they change your object's location, orientation, and size. Note that when using Scale, you can change the scale of an object and maintain its proportions by clicking the white cube in the center of the gizmo and dragging with your mouse. If you click an individual handle on the Scale tool, you will only change your object's relative size in one dimension. For example, making it taller or wider. You can also change an object's location, orientation, or size using the Details panel below the outliner and to the right of the viewport. With your object selected, access the Details panel and notice that there is a drop-down entitled Transform that contains values for location, rotation, and scale. You can modify these values by typing new ones into the appropriate boxes. You can use these tools to adjust your display bases, your imported models, or any other object on your island. Using orthographic views is a helpful way to easily and precisely place 3D assets where you want them. Orthographic views are two-dimensional views that represent a 3D object in the way it would look when viewed directly from different perspectives, including the front, the back, the right, the left, or the top. These views show the outlines of the assets on a grid. Using an orthographic view, you can make finer movements than you might be able to do in 3D space, as the objects are locked to a single plane. To switch between the perspective view, the default view in the viewport, to an orthographic view, navigate to the Perspective button in the top left corner of the viewport and choose your preferred orthographic view. I will start by moving my assets, in this case my display plinths, using the top view. In the orthographic view, you can see the top view of the plinths I brought onto the island earlier. Using the translation gizmo, the plinths can be moved. However, they can only be moved to the left and right or from front to back. They cannot be moved up and down while in the top orthographic view mode. To move assets up and down, we need to use a front, back, left, or right orthographic view. Choose the view that allows you to see and move the desired assets as you wish, and experiment until you get the view and placement you want. Check your work by returning to Perspective view and seeing if your display bases are placed where you want them to be. If not, keep experimenting with different orthographic views and different placements until you achieve the outcome you want. A useful trick that can make orthographic views easier to navigate is called the Focus function. Focus allows you to immediately snap to any asset on your island, regardless of the view you're using, rather than trying to locate the asset by navigating through your island. To use Focus, access the outliner on the right side of your screen. You will see a listing of every asset that exists on your island. If, for example, you want to navigate to a plinth asset, you can type plinth in the search box. This will result in a list of all existing plinth assets being displayed. You can also scroll through the list of assets until you find the one you want. Click on the asset you want to snap to in the outliner and then hit the F key on your keyboard to be brought to the asset immediately. This is a good trick to keep in mind anytime you are trying to locate a specific asset. If you'd like to change the degree of precision in your object placement, you can adjust the snap sizes by clicking on the value to the right of the grid icon toward the top right of the screen. Changing this value controls the level of precision that you will have when moving and placing your assets. In this example, the increment is set to 4. Clicking on this number brings up a drop-down that allows you to select a different value. A larger number increases the distance that the asset moves for each step that you move. The most precise movement control is achieved by using smaller numbers. Now we are going to add objects to display on the island by importing custom assets and placing them on our display bases. This procedure assumes that you have one or more 3D model files, such as photogrammetry models, stored on your computer as .glb files. Open the content drawer and click on the folder that includes your project's name. This is the folder where your imported content is stored. Click the Import button to open a File dialog box. Navigate to the folder on your computer that contains your 3D models. Select the models one at a time and then click Open to import them, or hold down the Control key and click on the file names one at a time to select as many as you want. When you have selected the desired file or files, click Open. Click the blue Import button on the resulting screen. The default settings should work for this purpose. It will take a moment to import the assets and process them. Once they have been imported, they should appear as available assets in your projects folder in your content drawer. Locate the static mesh for each model and click and drag it to bring it onto your island. Now that you've placed your display bases and imported your custom models, it's time to place your models on top of the displays. As always, you can use the translation, rotation, and scale gizmos to adjust the location, orientation, and relative size of your models. Using orthographic views, as discussed earlier, is going to be especially helpful in placing photogrammetry models on displays, since such models do not generally have the same regular geometry that other assets have, and they can be a little tricky to place precisely in 3D space. Access the Perspective menu near the top left of your screen and select the top orthographic view. Click on your 3D model to select it and drag it on top of your display base. It's possible at this stage that the model is not sitting precisely on top of the display base. Switch to left or right orthographic views so you can view your model and display from the side, and then use the translation gizmo to move your model up or down as needed. Repeat this process, switching between orthographic views until your model is placed as you wish. Check your work by switching back to perspective mode and seeing how your display appears in 3D. Use the translation and rotation gizmos to make further adjustments to the placement of your model as needed. If you need to make finer adjustments to the rotation, select your model by clicking on it. Then you can adjust the rotation grid snap value by clicking the button with the angle icon and adjusting the number to a smaller one in the drop-down menu. This allows you to rotate in smaller increments than the default of 90 degrees. By this point, you should have one or more models on top of display bases placed as you want them to be. Now you can add light features to illuminate your displays. UEFN enables multiple types of lighting to be added to your island, including environmental lighting, directional lighting, and point lighting. In this video, we will not be discussing environmental lighting in depth, but you can experiment with it by opening the content drawer, navigating to the Fortnite lighting post-process folder, and dragging a theme onto your island. Directional lighting is lighting that originates as a sun-like light source. It can illuminate large areas from a specific distance and direction. To use it, navigate to the Quick Add button on the toolbar near the top left of your screen and click it. A drop-down will appear from which you can select various types of lighting. Here you can select a directional light. You can also use the time of day setting to see what effect the hour of the day has on the lighting. In general, directional lighting should be set high up in the sky since it usually simulates the sun. For the purpose of building a display, you will most likely want to use point lights. Point lights are emitted from a single point and are best used to illuminate small areas. I will attach point lights to my displays so that they illuminate the displays. I will then show you how to connect your assets so that if the underlying asset, in this case, the model on display, is relocated, the point light will follow along. To add a point light to your island, you can navigate to the Quick Add button near the top left of the viewport and find the point light in the dropdown, much like you did for the directional light. Use the Quick Add button and select Lights, Point Light. The point light will appear as a small light bulb. Use the translation gizmo to locate the light in the vicinity of your chosen asset. When you add a point light to your island, you will see that it illuminates a relatively small area. If you are adding multiple types of lights to the same island, you may want to disable any previously added directional lights, since their intensity may overshadow your point lights. You can do this easily by selecting the light source in the outliner and clicking the small eye symbol that appears to the left of the asset name when you hover over the name with your mouse. Doing this toggles the light between hidden and visible. You can also choose to leave or relocate the directional light if you like the effect. Experiment until your environment appears as you wish. There are numerous properties of your point lights that can be adjusted in the Details panel. A few of the more important ones are intensity, color, and attenuation radius. Intensity sets how bright the light appears. Color sets the light's color. Attenuation radius determines the bounds of the light's influence, or how close an object needs to be affected by the light. With the point light selected in the outliner, access the Light drop-down in the Details panel and experiment with each of these features. You can change the intensity number to adjust the intensity of your point light. You can click on the light color bar to access the color picker and select a color of your choice from the color wheel. You can adjust the number associated with the attenuation radius to a larger or smaller one to change the range or reach of the point light. Each of these features has multiple settings and options that can change the appearance of your displays. Experiment with all of them to achieve the effect you want. Now that you have displays with illumination on your island, you may wish to connect each display with its associated light source so that all components move together rather than as individual entities if you choose to change their position. Grouping assets or attaching them has many useful applications within UEFN. I will use the outliner to attach the newly added point light to my custom model. All assets are listed in the outliner, but it may be difficult to see them all together. To make it easier, locate the area in the outliner where the assets are listed. Use the mouse to drag down the border so that more are visible. To attach a point light to your model, Click on Point Light in the outliner and drag it and place it on top of the name of your model in the list of assets. The light should now be listed below your model in the outliner in a hierarchical fashion, meaning that the light will move when you move the model. Check your work by clicking on your model and moving it with the translation gizmo. The point light should move with it. Be aware that because the point light is below your model in the hierarchical list, moving the point light will not move the model. The model is a parent to the point light, not the other way around. You can use the same approach to group other types of assets on your island. Note that you can select the point light in the outliner and then use the translation tool to move it around to achieve the best visual effect. You can also use the orthographic views to place the point light precisely. Although the point light bulbs are visible in the viewport, they will not appear when accessing the island through Fortnite. You will simply see an illuminated display. As you build more detailed islands with larger numbers of assets, you may wish to rename assets. You can do this by right-clicking the name of the asset in the outliner, selecting Edit from the drop-down menu, and then selecting Rename and typing a name of your choice. For example, you might want to add the name of your model to the name of the point light that it is connected to. UEFN has countless tools and assets that provide you with nearly limitless creative opportunities to build 3D experiences to your specifications. Have fun exploring the concepts we discussed here and continuing to experiment on your own as you build the world around you in 3D. Thanks for watching.